Yeah,
It
so
works.
yeah,
Amazing.
I wanted to chit chat about the ping stuff because
Yeah, it's
uh
pissing off a lot of people, man.
it's mostly like to me it's never really been a thing that I've ever really cared about because it's like if you're playing the game normally, it's never something that like your first reaction to dying or whatever is going to be that was that guy's ping. You know what I mean? Um
Right.
so I'm curious like what made you want to jump into this whole
Yeah,
thing?
yeah, yeah. So like I said in the video, like, and it's funny because I wouldn't even have looked. To be completely honest, I'm like kind of the same way. I don't go and like look at other people's streams or any of that stuff. Not normally. Uh, but a lot of times, like guys in the chat will, that
Mhm.
which is kind of how I met you, right? Because some
Yeah.
of your guys showed up and they were like, "I just wanted to see how that happened," and now we're friends. But
I forgot
when
about that. Fuck.
yeah, shot you in the
Bastard.
top of the head. It's the only time I've ever gotten you. Every other time we run into each other, I've gotten wrecked, but it's fine. um, and I have a little bit of a chest cold, so I'm sorry if I'm coughing.
It's all good.
But yeah, so this guy in my chat was like, "Yeah, the dude that just killed you, he's a Russian streamer and he's covering up his ping." And I was like, "Well, why the fuck is that relevant?" So then I just went and looked, and I was like, "Huh." I was like, "Well, if he's from Russia and he's playing here, then his ping's higher. Wonder if he's doing that on purpose." And then I was like, "Well, how can I test this to make it at least mimic like the point of what they're doing?" Which, in hindsight, like the test was really shitty, and like I like completely admitted to that,
Yeah, yeah. So
because
I think you owned up to the
yeah, like if I was going to cover the margin of error, I'd have to do like 300 runs. I actually talked to a prominent streamer that's a friend of ours that was a statistician in his prior life, and um he was the one that told me like for the margin of error I'd have to do 300 runs for a 5% margin of error, which would be acceptable.
yeah. Is that the p value? I mean, so that I mean,
Yeah.
like ultimately speaking, though, like the test that you
The test
did.
itself was incredibly flawed. Like I
No,
could
but
have just
even
made
but
it so much easier.
even if you designed it perfectly, like what was the goal?
I just
Because
wanted to see whether or not like because and then so what it made me look at then was um the battle nonsense video where he showed like if I turn my ping up and then I go to pull a leaner if somebody's running by me or whatever, like it's all desyncy. And obviously like he showed that it didn't really matter necessarily whether it was higher or lower, but the higher was exaggerated. And I
so,
was like, okay, well, I
but
wonder if this is true, all the time, or if it was just like a fluke for him or whatever. And that's kind of like why I tried to go down
but so
the road that I went down.
even if you did that though, like it seems like a weird thing to try to because like you what you were measuring
Yeah.
was your profits, which and maybe
Yeah.
your survival rate, which in my opinion are completely irrelevant. Like what you would want to
Yeah.
do is have two people standing looking at each other and measure like shoot at some synchronized time or like you
Super,
had
super
said
high frame rate, synchronize the time, like go on the countdown for the server start or whatever, and
because
then
yeah,
have
yeah, because
somebody
when you're
like
talking
lean.
about survival rate and profit, like those things are there's a billion other factors that
Yeah.
even if you came to the conclusion, even if you did 1,000 runs, even if the statistics were solid and the methodology was solid and everything like the sample size was solid,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah.
one of those things like
Why do those? So you know what it is? It's because I'm not a fucking science mind.
yeah.
And I went with what I knew. And I was like, okay, so what's the ultimate scoreboard? Well, the reason why people would do this because they want more XP and money. So I was like, okay, well, let's see if I survive more and I make more money.
Well,
And that was
so
kind of it. You know what I mean? But there's so many variables in those runs that it was like, okay, this was completely meaningless in
yeah.
hindsight.
So I think the other thing there is that is what you just said, which is the premise that you would be doing it for more survival and for more money, which I
Right.
don't think is fair. I play on EU servers all the time. All the time.
I know. Yeah.
Because and I don't hide my ping because I don't think that having 100 ping makes a fucking
It
difference.
shouldn't matter. No, no. And
Um
I don't, and in that regard, I don't necessarily think 100 ping matters. Actually, I think the game is probably tuned. The way that it felt was that if you were somewhere around like 100 to 130, like the interactions, at least for me, felt like normal.
Yeah.
Which you know what I mean? Like if it feels weird. Like if you're playing on like 40, it almost feels like either you or they get a jump on you, depending on which way the server decides to favor whoever. But if you're on like, and I know that this is completely like, biased, whatever, but
Anecdotal.
yeah, completely anecdotal bullshit. But like around like 100 to 125, it almost feels like the game's tuned to be there because like if you turn a corner, it's not like you or they instantly kill you or you kill them instantly or they kill you instantly as if no one moved. You know what like it almost feels like it's much more fluid.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know
don't
how to describe it.
I don't I look at my ping every now and then if I'm ever playing on the other servers. So let me step back. The reason why I play on those other
Sure.
servers has nothing to do with an advantage because I actually feel like whenever I do that, I always feel like great, I'm going to be at a disadvantage.
Right.
So like my motives are actually just to have more fun because typically if it's Wednesday, and it's like a holiday or something, nobody's going to be fucking playing the game in NA East at noon.
Right. Right.
But
No, they
five
won't be.
hours ahead, 5 o'clock or 6 or 7 or 8 p.m. in Amsterdam or
Right.
in London servers, there's so much more PvP. And I find most of the time during the time of day, there's tons more fights. So if I'm streaming, I
Yeah.
want I'll watch Deadly Slob and I'll watch Markstrom and those guys a lot of
You
times
want activity.
I
You want
want
you need
activity and I want
content.
fun. I don't care. I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
much rather go in there and die 100% of the time with fights with people than win every single fight against, a one-man lobby.
Sure.
So I think that
And
was
I
probably
agree
like
with that.
that was
Yeah.
probably my first like gut reaction was I know you were making a distinction and maybe the distinction was I guess not it was like I wanted you to make a distinction over here and people took it over here and you meant it
Yes.
here. I wanted you to
Yes.
say like I can't know these guys' intentions. This is an issue with the technology.
Yes.
Maybe
Yeah.
even not an issue. I don't know. I don't know enough about the net code. After watching your video, I don't think I know enough about the net code to really know that it's a
Well, and
problem.
neither do I. Like I completely admitted that I'm not a network engineer. I don't understand networking or what it takes to make a good fluid experience like you'll have on like a 300 man Rust server that seems like it doesn't have a lot of desync but still runs on Unity and all the other things and that game feels like good, for the most part if you have a solid server.
But
So
then
I don't know what the difference
the
is,
crazy thing is like when you play a Mordhau, if you have like more than an 80 ping, it's
Yeah, you get shit on.
unplayable.
You get shit on.
Well, no, not necessarily. It depends because all you need to do it's the whole like peeker's advantage thing where I find that if I'm just swinging ahead, like if I behave as if everything they do is 3 times as fast as it normally would, then
Right.
it becomes like a normal fight after that. It's similar to when I
Yeah.
play guitar along with a song because I have latency. I'm not playing what I'm hearing. So I have to like compensate for that. That's how it feels like in Mordhau. In
Right.
Tarkov, no matter what, sometimes I feel that, sometimes I don't. And there's a million issues, whether it's the net code or whether it's my client or whether it's the server. I don't know. But
Wait, did you
um,
just say that you play guitar with latency? Like you're hearing the music ahead of when you're playing it?
I used to more than I do now. Now I do, but it's much smaller than I used to.
I don't think most people can do that. I can't sing with latency.
Yeah,
Like,
you have to get used to it.
dude, it's so hard. That is so difficult. That's insane that you're doing that.
It becomes like you are using the output as like your guide.
Yeah.
I play a note and then I hear it and then like I'm playing relative to that note. My fingers are just on autopilot.
I'm actually moving my camera over. I just realized I'm like side eyeing this damn thing the whole time. I'm not even looking at you.
Yeah, no problem. So
All right.
so yeah, so it like I think I didn't read when I read the comments. I didn't read the comments of the first one, but when you did the second one where you had some corrections and some clarifications and stuff, I read most of the comments and most of them actually seemed positive.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that what's funny is the general reaction that I've gotten from a lot of people with it. Like anybody that's ever like tried to come in and like talk to me while I'm live or something has never been like, "Hey, your video was shit." It's always been, the vast majority of the stuff has been like supportive. I guess would be the best way to put it. But
There's definitely been
there's obviously the dissension. Like, I'm actually making I'm actually making an animation or having it made for me right now. That's like the more you know, like NBC shooting star, but it's gonna say just ask Reddit in giant letters after this whole fucking debacle because like they actually I didn't even post it. Somebody else posted the video to try and start a discussion around it, and it got so polarized that the mods of the Discord shut the thread down and said it was nothing more than me doing a witch hunt for Russian streamers. And I was like, "What? Okay,
Well,
sure."
so I mean that's taking it a little too far,
Yeah,
but
yeah, a little bit.
but I will say that my initial reaction to your first video was like, and I'm saying this just as like my gut reaction, not necessarily like the right response, but after seeing it, the first thing that went through my head was if I could boil down that video into like one sentence, it would be the best players in the world are only the best players in the world because they are knowingly and willingly using this sort of exploited feature of like a broken system to gain an advantage, and that's why they do it. It's for that purpose, and that's why I think
Right.
it's like
The competitive edge thing. Yeah, 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 yeah.
like I
So
think that's just like that's kind of a sharp edge to come
yeah,
running
that's
in with.
yeah, that's yeah, it was a sharp edge. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know what's funny is I actually didn't mean to make it like look or sound that harsh. So, you know, cake on my face and all that. Pepega, etc. Um, but the way that I wanted it to be portrayed was that I guess it appeared as though it because it maybe Arvin being the exception because he was so much further ahead and he was like dude's rocking like 16, 18, 20 hour like long streams like the almost the entire duration of like that contest. Like he was killing everybody. I think he beat everyone by like 10,000 XP or no, like 20 25 no, wait. 250-ish thousand, yeah, XP, something like that. Like he was way ahead. Um but the way that I guess what I wanted to I guess evoke and honestly like to take a step back, the thing that threw me off and one of the things that I never really visited was the tick rate of the servers and apparently the tick rate is much lower. According to some people, the tick rate of the servers are much lower than what Battle Nonsense did when he tested it
You
for
talking
point
about
7
like
and then
dashing
point 8.
dots video? Did you see
Yeah,
that one?
so well, it's not just Dash, but one of our good streaming buddies, again, different guy this time, messaged me and said, it's not ping. Labs has a tick rate of 30, which is why playing on Labs is such garbage. And then sent me like highlight videos that people were making of them like crashing through doors and wrecking people before they even really knew anyone was there. And they were like, this is because the tick rates of the server are 30 instead of, 70, 80, 90, because, the client isn't being updated fast enough to realize what the hell is going on around it until it's like, quote unquote, too late. So you have like the positional information, and then people shoot at that positional information, and then the servers being, client authoritative, take the client's word for it, saying I just shot all these guys, and then the server goes, okay, they're dead, and then they never even saw the guy turn the corner.
Do we know
So
for a fact that that's what the server does? Because
no,
so I know
so
I know
so
I know a super limited amount about like lag compensation, and
right,
I always my like totally amateur understanding was that of at least like how some networking works uh was that it never takes the client's word for it. Um the only
yeah,
reason the server should at least figure out what the truth is based on the
yeah,
timing of everything. And then what ends up happening is that's when you'll run past the door, think you're alive, and you'll die because the server's like, no, your client's wrong. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
if it took the client's word for it, you would survive in that case. Um, so I mean, I got to do a lot more research on lag compensation and all that stuff. But
Yeah, so the reason why I mentioned the client sided server authoritative part was because Battle Nonsense when they made the hang on one second. I'm just gonna
That was like a year and a half ago, wasn't it?
yeah, but my understanding is the net code hasn't changed at all. So he never had a reason to
Redo it.
like want to change it or redo it or whatever. I need to turn on the backlight compensation. This thing's getting like crazy dark, so it's a little better. I still look washed out as shit, but at least I'm not sitting in a cave. So my understanding was that he had looked at this and compared it to what they did with Battlefield 1 when DICE and their lag compensation more or less said, okay, if person A has a ping of 40 and person B has a ping of 125 or 150 or whatever, with a cutoff of 250, if they shot at the model as they saw it moving through space and time, even if you with the ping of 40 were ahead of that position, like you're running through a door frame, from a left to right, and somebody's standing perpendicular to you, before you get through the door frame, person B shoots you in the side as you're running by. Even though on your screen you're past the door frame by the time you hear the gunshot, you still take damage because person B saw you and then shot you, and then the server registered it anyway. But it would
So,
get to a certain threshold.
but why? Because what you're saying is that it would select the worst ping, basically, because it has
Yes,
to.
it would favor the higher pinged player in order to create a quote unquote smoother gaming experience for the laggier person, which
I'll have to go
is
back
what it
and
is.
watch. I'll have to go back and watch that
Yeah.
video.
So then and then it looked like the cutoff, and he basically kept tweaking it until he found like the cutoff point where somewhere around like I want to say 200 250 ping. If in that same scenario someone ran by and you shot at the model, it would count as a miss because the server would say you're too laggy. We're not going to allow for this compensation anymore. And then you'd have to actually shoot in front of them in order for the server to then register the hit. So they were doing some wonky stuff there. And according to, I guess, what Chris had made up in this video when it came to Tarkov, he, I don't think he outright said it, but he had alluded to the servers more or less behaving the same exact way in his testing. And I think I want to say in the point 7 video, he actually referenced the dice lag compensation when he was doing the Tarkov video. I think it's wrapped up right in there.
Yeah, all right,
So
I'll have to go back because it's been like a billion years since
yeah, so he
I've even
called
looked
he
into this.
called
So
him he called Tarkov servers client side server authoritative more or less, and basically showed that it behaved the same kind of way. But what it seems like is there isn't any cutoff when it comes to Tarkov, because if you have the capability of doing it, and like through the comments section and all that, there's guys that are saying like I connect and play with buddies in Australia and I have a ping of 300, and I was always wondering why I was like wrecking stuff, and again, anecdotal or whatever, um, but it looks or appears to be without any real proof or no way to really prove it without BSG saying so, that there isn't like an upper limit, like they cut you off on the launcher. But I've had people that at least I mean I trust that have said that there are scripts that exist where they can bypass that and still be able to connect to servers at higher pings if they want to. I haven't seen them, I haven't touched them, I haven't used them, but they tell me that they have or know how to make one.
how high are we talking?
I mean, apparently you could make it 9999 and connect to all of them if you wanted to.
Okay.
So it basically turns off the watchdog and allows you to be able to connect to whatever you want. I would assume that if you went to BSG and asked them if this was real, they would just say no. But I mean, obvious way to get around that is just to connect to a guy that lives on the other side of the world, and you can party up and then play together, and it won't matter.
Wait a minute. So, but I
Um,
can choose Singapore, and that's 250, or Sydney is 260. I can choose that.
it lets you can actually click the box, or is it grayed out?
Oh, it is. Well, wow. It wasn't grayed out until I went to click it, and then it grayed out.
Yeah. So, and then you'll find that there's servers that'll be right on that fringe, like 157. But if you watch it long enough, you can watch it go to 149, and then all of a sudden the box shows up. Then you can click it, and then if you hit OK fast enough to where it doesn't like get past and like reping, because if it pings again and goes to 152, it'll uncheck it, but you can
Yeah.
like check it and like get out. So I've noticed like myself, if I connect to Turkey, and depending on where it's hopping through on the launcher, it'll tell me that it's 147, 148, 149. But when I actually get on the server, I'm playing an interchange of 195. And I'm still running around doing whatever, and it still feels fluid. I'm not skipping anywhere. And maybe 150, it's dialed in so that 150 and under, 200 and under, it doesn't ever feel like you're going to be like warping through time and space. But to the onlooker, maybe you are. I don't know. I can tell you that when I played on Factory in Australia, because I won a challenge that Pestily had for me, and then he had to give me like 20 Bitcoin or something. Um, when I did that, he was bouncing all over the place on my screen, but I was running through the map and I wasn't warping around at all. My ping was like 350. Now, according to Dashing Dot, he says if you try and play at a ping that high, it's unplayable. You zip and warp all over the place. But I've only done it. I mean, I only did that once, and for me, it didn't feel like I was skipping around. So
Well, I
I
mean,
don't
yeah,
I don't
because
know.
you don't feel like you're skipping around. It
Right,
doesn't.
but to the onlooker, I could be.
Yeah, so like whenever I play with Ghost or with Pestily, we will usually do like end up like West Coast. I'll have like a 90 ping, and I'm sure
Right,
theirs is probably way higher. But yeah, they're just like
right.
like
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
it comes
They're
in.
zipping through space and time, but that's what I mean. Like, if everybody else is relatively local to the server and somebody like him is skipping around on the server, they could easily turn a corner. At those intervals or whatever, they could turn a corner and dome someone, and the person in receipt of that hail of bullets may never have seen them in the first place. Because
Gotcha.
if the server is taking the client's word for it without
But wait a
a
minute.
limit, you know what I
But
mean?
they're seeing the person from 300 milliseconds ago or whatever. Like if they can't.
Right.
It's not. I think a lot of people
And
think that if you have
it's
the
not
ping,
one-sided, and
yeah,
that's why I said in the video, like, my hypothesis was if you're playing with a higher ping and playing aggressively, then dollars, right? Like, that
it's
was
yeah,
kind of the point.
but it's not so much aggressive. It's movement.
Yeah, yeah, like, if you stay moving, exactly, and like I said, it's basically you're coming around like a blind corner. Because like if I'm running in a linear plane of movement, down a hallway toward you, it doesn't matter if I'm 400 milliseconds old. If you shoot down that plane, I'm still taking bullets through my chest,
Yeah,
right? But if you're looking down that same hallway and we see each other at the same time as I turn a corner and then I shoot you, it's likely that the server registers those hits from my client before yours. And that's why that was basically the working hypothesis was, using that movement to my advantage with that delay, am I winning as a result, right? And it's like super fucking hard to test.
so even if that's the case, I think this probably goes back to like my original thesis was even if that's the case, which I'm not doubting. I honestly just don't care enough really right
Yeah,
now to
yeah.
like do
Yeah.
the research. There's so many other.
Honestly, I just thought it was interesting. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I wasn't trying to paint people in a bad light necessarily. I just looked at it like, okay, maybe they know all about this already and they're using it, to gain an advantage, by playing on US servers constantly or whatever. And it could have just been, and then there's the argument of them, trying to avoid stream snipers and that kind of stuff. And I think for
Yeah, I want to
for
talk about that
certain people,
after for sure.
yeah, yeah. But anyway, you were saying something.
No, I mean, but like I said, all of those things, even if the test was perfect, and even if the issues with the net code are exactly like you say, like everybody says, I'm not doubting that. Like I said, I just don't really care that much.
Right.
I think that my biggest issue was trying to place motives on people. You know what I mean? Without
Yeah.
like, so there's a difference between, so when you say that they sort of admitted that that's what they were doing, unless I heard
Yeah.
them say I am doing this so that I can get an advantage over other people, That's different than I'm intentionally playing on servers for another reason. Like I intentionally play on London and Amsterdam
Right.
because I find more geared guys at certain times of the day.
Yep. And the guys that were farming XP, to some extent, I'm sure were, or at least a couple of them were playing on United States servers, trying to get on them at off times because there's less people and they could just farm labs and get XP faster because
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to deal with bots than it is people. And and I conceded that to an extent. Um, but I had like of the five people that I mentioned between like Mazza and Bikizi and Arvin and Dunduk and whatever, like three of them openly were like, "Yep, I play on higher ping because it's easier. Like I get an advantage." Or they have a perception that there's an advantage. Um and I'm like, "Okay, sure." But I don't want to like go and thumb them because
Wait,
if I
wait,
thumb them,
but
that
when you
invokes hate, you know what I mean?
so I don't know. I don't know how many of these guys. I've never talked to any of these guys. I don't know like if English is their first language or what. I know a lot of them are from
No.
overseas. But so I play that way because it's easier. Are you sure they don't mean because there's not people and it's bots?
No, no, like okay,
I'm just trying
one
to
of
be super pedantic.
yeah, no, no, no. Okay, so one of them, I've run into. A few of them I've run into a bunch of times. Because I play during the day, and then they tend to play in like the American daytime slash afternoon, in labs, and I run labs all the time because I'm a lab rat. I've had them. We're in firefights, I die or whatever, and then they'll come in and be like, "Hey, that was me," like on a with a different name or whatever, and they'll be like, "Hey, that was me." I'd be like, "What are you doing on US servers there, buddy?" And then it'd be like, "Well, because the higher ping makes it easier to kill you," like one of those, and or I've had another person, another one of those people, said that they knew that there was a distinct advantage to playing on US servers from Russia, where they were located. There was a distinct advantage to playing on US servers from Russia. And English is their second language. They actually speak it pretty well, because of that ping advantage. And for that reason, they don't play on United States servers. They only tend to play locally. And I was like, okay, if you say so, you know what I mean? And like I said, I didn't want to like go like naming them. Like I've interacted with this person and they admitted to it, because I didn't want to like put the crosshairs on them, you know. And the unfortunate reality is from this, it seems like the crowd kind of like started putting crosshairs on people
Well, because what happened
afterward.
was you're like, I'm not naming names. Here's 5 names. Like you
Yeah,
showed the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
list. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I actually
And
until
the
just
problem was,
now, I didn't. I didn't. You kept saying I didn't name names, and I actually didn't know what you meant until you just explained that now about who admitted to what or whatever. To me, you're like, I
right?
didn't want to name names. It's like you had the player list up on screen. That's what I thought
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
were.
yeah. Yeah, and honestly, like, it just ended up being that they were like Eastern European dudes, and it wasn't. And actually, there was a sixth person on that list. I guess that was a French streamer that I never even looked at because I didn't know that they're a French streamer. Um, and if it had been U.S. guys, I would have, looked at the same thing. And then and if one or two of those guys had covered their ping and the other three or four didn't, I would have just been like, okay, I don't know what this means. Maybe they're just trying to avoid stream snipers. It just was like, four of the five, you know, and I was like, all right, are they all doing this? And then like I don't know, like it just looked weird. And then when before I even released it, when people that in that community that knew that I was like working on this came in and they had told me like, yeah, we're playing with high ping so that it's easier to kill people. And I was like, oh, so maybe there is something here, And then yeah, I went through and I listed everybody, and I actually mentioned Quattro, who was 11th on the list, but I never said why I was mentioning him. And the reason why I had mentioned him was because he wasn't covering his stuff up and was just going through and nailing people anyway, high or low, and I had actually meant to include him in that, and why I had mentioned his name in the first place, and
Does he
I never
play?
got back to it.
I've never noticed his ping. Does he play on NA? I've never.
I've been told that he does sometimes, but as far as I am aware, he doesn't.
Yeah.
For the
So
90% of the time. So,
yeah.
um, maybe he doesn't care or need it. I don't know.
I had at least one. I think there might have been two or three. It could have been the same guy after I banned him. creating sock puppet accounts. But I remember a guy came in here, came into my chat and basically said there was a lot of folks that had like the same kind of thing of, you know, why did you shout out that cheater Quattro Race? You know, he's a blah blah blah,
What?
all these bad things about Quattro Race, and I was like, okay,
Sorry, he's better than you.
I'm like, I don't know. I've been in his stream a bunch. I don't speak Russian. I obviously have no idea what he's saying half the time, other than what he says to me. He's always been extremely nice, extremely respectful. You know, and
He's a good player.
and he's one of the best players that I've ever seen play the game.
He's really good.
He's a fucking machine. So
He is.
So I said, all right, cool. Going into another, and I the guy might have had TV in his name too. So which made me think like,
really?
if you're a streamer coming in calling out another streamer saying that they're cheating, I said you have fucking 10 seconds to give me proof, or I'm gonna ban your ass. And he said,
couldn't.
okay, no. He posted your link, your video. That
He
was his
posted my
proof.
video as
Yeah,
proof?
as the Quattro Race is cheating.
What?
So that's why I'm saying there's like you got to be so careful because there's so many
Dude, I
people that
know.
don't. If you don't fully understand the ping shit, which I don't, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to not necessarily understand the tech, not understand necessarily where you're coming from. It's like it's why I'm always extremely careful about what I say and how I say it whenever I've done any of my science videos, because if you go in with, there's a lot of things you could potentially either get wrong or not get wrong, but still could like snowball into something else, whether you're starting with incorrect assumptions or there's unstated assumptions or premises that are there that you're leaving up to interpretation, right? Like you never clearly said, here's my thesis, which is why I'm not surprised that so many people say you're just calling out these Russian streamers, saying that all the Russian streamers are basically exploiting this broken thing and they're doing it on purpose and it's unethical. You know, like that's what I got from it when I first saw it. So I think that's like the most dangerous part about doing these things is you at some point you almost need to say like the most important thing I need to say is this one sentence that makes it extremely clear without any ambiguation. This, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and like, you know, live and learn. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like,
Yeah, like I'm not trying to like nail you to a cross. I just
I am. Everything that you're saying is something that I agree with. I mean, hell, Pestily put in the comment section, you know, like a bulleted list of stuff, and I was like, I literally agree with everything here, you know, and that's what I said to him, because I did, you know, everything that he had to say was something that made sense, you know. But anyway, so
I think the only other last thing that I wanted to touch on was the stream sniping thing. So it's like amazingly easy to, if you know where somebody is from, if you see the ping number, it's extremely easy to know very often.
Relative, if you know where the streamer's from.
Exactly. If they see my ping is 70 or 80, they know I'm West Coast. If they see, you know what I mean? So there was a period of time where I got killed by the same two guys, basically 15 raids in a row, over and over and over and over and over again, and I would wait and I would play guitar and hide my screen and they would just be in my game every time. And I don't know, like you had mentioned before the whole rumors of like, I don't want to talk about it. Not even going to get into that shit. But if I cared enough, I would hide my ping also, because I think it's extremely easy given the such small player base and the way that the matchmaking works in the game, that if you queue up anytime within 60 seconds of somebody else queuing up and you're in the same region, you're probably going to get in the game with them. And you can see, I just put up a video on YouTube. You would have to like pause it and slow it down. I think I have screenshots of it, but I filled up EOD stash, 660 dog tags in order. And I have, you know how many I have 6, 7, 8, 9 copies of, and they were like pistol boys that were level 3. Like they were just newbies. They weren't even trying to stream snipe me, but they get in the same raid with me every time. It just goes to show you that the matchmaking system is super simple and there's not a lot of people playing.
Yep, they're just like that's exactly it. So so in the case of, and I alluded to this already, or I talked about this specifically already. So in the case of guys like Ghost and Pestily and Slush, the popular guys, like Pestily has access to like 3 servers, where, unless he's playing with somebody outside of like Australia and they're meeting somewhere in the middle, Slush has access to like 3 or 4 servers. I think Ghost has like 5 that he can play on, like in total, like solo. And when you have that few of a number of servers, you're absolutely right. Like you can, if somebody's been watching Pest for a couple of days, maybe less than that, based on what the ping readout is, you can tell where it is that he's playing just based on knowing that he only has a few options, and each one of them is going to give a very distinct difference in that readout. So for him, covering that up makes absolute complete sense to me. My argument was, I guess in the case of like myself, if I was going to click the checkbox for every server that I have the capability of connecting to, and then just said, fuck it, roll the dice, and then hit go, I just looked at it like if I have 35 servers that I can play on at any given point during the day, and they're all servers that could end up taking me off to do that. If we weren't this late in a wipe cycle and the player base was like 20% of what it is on new patch release day, then it would be, in my mind, extremely difficult given the player base size for somebody to be able to stream snipe me. This late, it's significantly easier because there's like, we always joke there's like 7 guys that are playing on, NA right now when you're live. You know what I mean?
I would have to do. I'm keen to do a little bit of research because this actually interests me on the analysis of like the chances of somebody getting into a raid, because it depends on. There's timing windows, right? If you're in a raid,
absolutely.
If you're in a raid for 30 minutes. If sometimes it takes 2 or 3 minutes to get.
Well, and then there's the scav load-ins and all that stuff, right? So, and obviously, the smaller the player base, the higher percentage likelihood that somebody's going to be able to get in when you get in. And we both know that the window is like 2 minutes or something after a raid starts, that people are still doing late load-ins, even though that was supposed to be done with like 2 patches ago. So people are still able to load into a raid late, even though that's not supposed to be a thing anymore. So you have the load time where it's doing the matchmaking, and then once it finally gets the matchmaking done, and you, even if you're lucky enough to see the countdown, then you're getting into a raid, and then you have a 2-minute window of time where somebody else could come in behind you. So there's a lot of opportunity, especially now, to be able to get stream sniped by people.
Yeah, so
especially if you're as popular as you are, or Pestily is, or Slush is, or Tweak or whoever. Anybody that's got 100 viewers plus is probably getting stream sniped just about every raid they run.
So the other thing that I wanted to, so I guess not in summary, because there are a couple things that I think would be interesting to talk about too, but my biggest thing, like my science alarm was going off, where it was like I have a checkbox list, and I'm not perfect. I'm sure I've made mistakes before, but like my checkbox list for like an experiment, a properly done experiment oftentimes would involve some sort of blinding. You can't always do that, but also you don't want.
For this one, you could
do it blind. I've actually been thinking about potentially doing something similar. It's a lot of work, and like I said, I don't care enough, especially not before 0.12.
No, afterward. Well, that was the other thing. That's the other thing. Is like the net code currently is supposed to be rendered like completely obsolete the moment that 0.12 goes live.
So I don't know about that. I don't know if any of the networking is changing at all, or if it's just client. I don't know, but.
Apparently, the engine changes everything, like when it comes to the netcode. I don't know how true that is.
I won't say apparently anything, because apparently the Earth is flat, because I got told on Reddit.
Yes,
but so there's that. There's the piece of, you don't want to go in. You can go in with a hypothesis, but not with
bias.
I won't say bias, but like.
Well, I get accused of having bias. That's why
unstated premises.
Yeah.
Or unsubstantiated premises. What you basically said was, if A and B are true, and also
Yes.
C, D, E, and F we're taking for granted are true, and I'm not even going to say it. Then
Yeah.
the conclusion necessarily follows from the premises. And what I would say is
Yes.
this premise is untrue. This premise has no evidence. This premise, might be true. Maybe we're not sure. And also, the conclusion doesn't follow from these premises, even if they were true.
Can we just agree that Arnie is adorable though?
What's up, Arnie?
Yeah, he's chilling.
Give him a little pet.
Yeah.
Good dog. But yeah, so I mean that's the biggest thing, like going forward, if you want to do more of this stuff, is like literally go back to like fucking, it's so funny
learning
like,
the scientific method in 7th grade earth science.
Dude, it's so funny how like you roll your eyes at that and you're like, scientists don't do that. And then like as I've grown up and become an engineer and all this stuff,
they absolutely do.
I realized like that's literally the distinction between science and pseudoscience, is these very specific steps about blinding and bias and
and then peers will end up dismantling things and finding things that didn't work. Like, here's a variable you didn't consider that ruined your whole experiment,
Yeah.
And like this whole thing, like I said, was one big learning experience, because while I didn't necessarily want to, slag people, it looks like I inadvertently ended up doing it, and then the experiment that I was trying to run that seemed in my head to make the most sense ended up being like riddled with errors, so it took people basically outlining all the things that weren't right for me to go like, yep, you're absolutely right there.
Yeah.
All right, well, next time,
Right on.
So
there was one other thing I took note on, which was that I don't know and I'm just curious about. Are we sure that if, let's say, two people were sitting in the same room and they loaded into a raid at the same time, are we sure that their match timers would be the same?
Jesus, that is such a good question.
Because when I watched your video, I recorded it, and I've been meaning to do this. I actually didn't see a significant difference in the timings with the different things. I wanted to take it and just shift it. And to me, like, it's possible that if I took it and shifted it, everything would line up perfectly. The door opening would line up perfectly. The shots would line up perfectly. It's like, so how it's like kind of, I don't know what you synced it on, because you said, I think you said you synced it on the timer.
The sync was on the start timers for the raid. Like, he didn't load in late and I didn't load in late. So I basically synced it up on BSG's timer saying like raid start in, and then put those timers within 2/100ths of a second of each other, because there's no real way to line up the clips otherwise.
Well, what if you line it up on the shots? No, I'm not saying you should do this, but it's like, well, what if?
What if I lined it up on the audio of the shots? You mean, or if I lined it up on like as the doors both opened at the same time in our
It could be
view.
audio cues, could be video cues, anything other than a value that, like, we know so much about the game is incorrect with the stats and with the numbers and
so that's the thing.
Times like when
there's if you look, so here's something interesting. If you look at the video, okay, with the timers synced up the way they are. If you notice, when I have the two windows running in parallel, where his shots go off and then the audio is delayed on my end, and even though he might be like 30 yards away, right? So there shouldn't be all that much delay, but there's some pretty noticeable delay. If you look at the shots that he fires versus the shots when I hear them, and then there's a moment in between where a scav throws a grenade. And when the scav throws the grenade, the explosions have a difference of maybe 75-ish ms. It's like boom, boom. And he hears it, then I hear it. It's almost immediate. And the clips aren't any different in their time signature. I didn't adjust anything. So from an audio cue perspective, you can hear him fire, and then there's a very noticeable delay when I hear the firing stop and when he actually stops. And then you on his end hear a pin get pulled and a grenade go tunk tunk tunk, and then there's like a boom, and then right after it's like boom boom, like on my end what I hear. So the AI controlled stuff versus him versus what I hear is almost immediate, almost at the same time, versus when he's firing and what I am hearing when he's firing have like a 200 ms delay at least.
So
It's interesting.
and I don't. It was really hard to use any visual cues because you
Yes.
shrunk the screens down and YouTube
Yeah.
and probably ripped it from Twitch and then uploaded it to YouTube. I
And
couldn't
then
see
put it in
shit.
YouTube.
I
Yeah.
couldn't see anything. So
Couldn't see a goddamn thing. Yeah.
I actually couldn't even see the door open when I was looking at the screen from like the angle that I was looking at it just because it was so dark
Like
and
the fuck?
pixelated.
What is that?
But I would want to be careful because my first reaction to what you just said was that there's a lot of assumptions there. There's a lot of assumptions, and so rather than
like the distance and like the delay because of the distance,
not even that, but that's something worth keeping in the back of your
Yep.
head.
Yep.
I think this kind of goes back to I have an explanation that could fit here. This is the explanation.
Here's here. Watch me inject this in. Yeah.
Where there's potentially or saying there's no other explanation, therefore this is the only one. So like
Right.
for example, let's just thought experiment this because I've never thought about this before until just now. I could be talking out of my ass, but if not, it's a worthy exercise to go through. Wouldn't the grenade, like, it's not like the scav exists on both of your, I mean the scav is server side.
The scav is server side. That's right.
So the grenade explosion, why would it hit his client before yours? Doesn't make any sense.
Right. So the way that I looked at this was, how can I put this? So if the only potential explanation would be because it was right next to him, right? Like maybe it's the distance thing that caused it to be
the speed of sound.
Yeah, because and it sounds stupid, but there is even in Tarkov there is, they try to do some of that where like you hear the crack of the, if a round goes by your head, you hear the crack if the gun is close enough and all that. Like you hear the crack as the bullet passes by and all.
That's like a subsonic thing, though, right? Is that
it's like the supersonic crack. Like it's like if you hear the crack and then the bang, the bullet or the gun is X far away versus if you hear the crack after the bang, the gun is this much closer. Et cetera, et cetera. So they do some of that with the soundscape of the game. But you know what? That's actually a really good question.
It's just one more thing that I would use as a piece of information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I wonder if you were to say, okay, if the ping is, your ping was 20 and his was 70, let's just start from a different anchor point. Maybe if you make it so that his explosion is 70 milliseconds later than or 50 milliseconds later than yours.
Right.
Maybe now we'd have a different outcome.
Right. Or if you were going to use audio, if we it's kind of another slippery slope to do this, but if you were, let's say you were roughly, if you were to look at like where that nade landed and then you say, okay, he's X number of yards away and I'm X number of yards away, and that's about equivalent in distance, just for the sake of making the argument.
So
if you were equidistant, you could basically sync the clips up on that explosion and say we both heard it at the same time, right? But even if that were true, there's still a very noticeable delay in the audio between when I heard what I heard from him and what he heard as he heard it when he produced it. Like as he's producing the gunfire and the sound from that, I am delayed in my hearing of it, even if that nade was completely synced. Let's say it is a 75 ms difference. That still means that I'm gonna have a delay on that audio. Like, and it would be trailing his.
So what does that mean then? Like, so let's say that's true. Let's take
So
that for granted. What does that then mean?
so
That
what it would mean is that um I am behind his client in being in sync with his client. Right. So as he produces stuff, I'm delayed in realizing what he's producing,
but
like
that's
data
true for
wise.
him as well.
It would be true for him as well, right? But like in this case, what's his name? Without aim in this case was, he was the aggressor,
And
and
also,
I was,
not to mention, you would
I
lose
did.
that.
I was using MPX. Like
You would
I
lose
was
that
probably
fight
still fucked.
99% of the time
And
anyway.
and like I said, I don't want to take anything away from him. The guy's good. Like he's a very, very good player. And he was also the aggressor, and he was also the one moving. Right. So if he was ahead, quote unquote, and saw me at the same time, he's still having the advantage in addition to the ballistics and he was wearing an Alton, I think, and other shit. He's still got the advantage over me. Probably still would have killed me. But he was still ahead of me. You know what I mean? So we know at least, what do you want, however you want to put it. Like we have that sense that there is something very, very wrong with the net code without being able to pinpoint it. It's just, I did like the kindergartner attempt at trying to pinpoint like something was up,
Yeah,
and,
so
I was like, oh, what's science?
There's a clip I want to show you that I thought was super interesting because now, but everything is shifted now. Now that nobody can blame cheaters, everything is ping. It's now the boogeyman.
It really is.
And now all I get is, what do you think about all of the top streamers exploiting ping? Is now the new thing that people come in with their first comment on my stream.
What have I done?
Dude,
what have I done?
It's dozens of times a day.
Dude, what did I tell you? I said it was like I've created Frankenstein's monster. Like it just keeps getting worse.
But I want to
like that video's at like 50K now. It's like almost my fastest growing most watched video ever. Like it's only surpassed by the other laggy desyncy video that I made where when I was in a firefight with Deadly, and I basically was like, there's no way you can tell if somebody's cheating or not because I was a cheater there. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was crazy. That was some insane like desyncy.
But let me show you. So I gotta find this clip. It's in my history somewhere. There was a guy that I killed with probably the most disgusting flick of my entire life. It was
really
sick, dude. It was dirty.
Just dirty, yeah.
And
was he legit?
He was legit. He was a Brazilian streamer playing in NA, and people were like calling me a cheater, because he couldn't even see me. And in that case, it's a perfect example of, it makes sense, right? If he's 150 milliseconds and I go, bah, with a headshot in the factory top floor, well, now his ping fucked him over that time.
Was that the one where you like quick scoped and whacked him from like
while he was going
100
prone?
yards?
No. This was
while he was going prone?
This was in the hallway of factory, third floor. I was in the sky bridge, and I just peeked the door and went, whoop. And then I looked out and I jumped across and I was like, did I kill him? I just literally tossed a shot and was like, oh shit.
Like just quick flicked and caught him in the head?
I didn't even think I hit him. I like literally
caught him in the head as he was going prone. And if you look, he goes prone. You know how there's like a filing cabinet kind of on the right side? He goes prone, and as he's going prone, he's dead. His face shield just splatters. And when you slow it down, you see nothing unless you pay real close attention, because if you look at the timing, I peek out and you can see like it would have been just my elbow would have been visible, and I shoot him and pop back in. But when he's running and goes prone, you can zoom in and see my fucking elbow is there. So he's going up. Yeah, okay. So he's going up the staircase. Goes to turn. Oh yeah, this is right off of the Oh, dude. And he doesn't know how the hell it happened.
You can see the shot in my elbow.
Yeah.
Like this
Dude,
isn't,
that is
and
such a dirty shot, man. Dude, the face, you're like, ooh. Oh my god. How do I maximize?
I think you can, the lower right, you can full screen it.
Yeah, I full screened it, but it's like full screen me and you.
Double click my screen.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Did it work?
Yeah.
Also, let me change my audio. Oh, never mind. Fuck it.
Yeah. Oh man, like yeah, you saw his helmet, like go down. Like there's his helmet. Oh, dude, that is like such a little hairpin, like you're dropped down to like his, yeah. Wow, dude, on it too. That's so dirty.
So
that's so dirty.
But if you look at the timing, like, all right, so let's look.
Like he's on the ground.
He's not fully there, right? His elbow is like just
yeah.
on the
His
ground.
head's not all the way down. Yeah.
And then
yeah.
if you watch,
but on his screen, I think he was all the way down, right? Yeah. Yeah, he's all the way down.
No, he was all the way down, but it's the elbows. Like he hadn't yet put his fucking elbows up.
Yeah, he's like just ADSing. Like as it finishes, that's when he gets hit. Right here, boop. Oh,
so like to me.
So wait, so there's something interesting. If you look, so if you slow that way down, if you slow that way down on his view, if you slow it down, when the moment that the star shows up, like right here, right, that freeze frame. Look at, there's your muzzle flash, like off the ceiling and all. Right? So there's your like he takes the hit and there's your muzzle flash in the air. Right there, see? There it is.
Yeah, but
I'm just saying like
you
he got
that?
Yeah. You would. It's just a question of like, yeah, I mean you would still.
I'm just saying
I mean, it's a supersonic round.
Looking at this, to me, like,
yep.
This
yeah, 150 ms shouldn't matter. And actually I think factory has a higher. That's the question, right? So I think all of this boils down to what like Dashing Dot was saying in his video about tick rate, right? So, my understanding is so Battle Nonsense basically said that the average tick rate from the client to the server was around 68, and then the average tick rate from the server to the client was 93, which isn't high. But it's not awful, because if you look at the tick rate of like some of the you know, like the, not PUBG, but some of like the battleground games, those BR games, sometimes at the start of those games the tick rate's 10 or 20. You know, and then you're always looking at it like, why am I hitting that guy 7 times in the armor, even though it doesn't really look like it? You know what I mean? But I basically got told that the tick rate of the servers for labs are 30, which would explain a lot of that like wonky weird shit. Whereas like if factories tick rates are 60 or 70 or whatever, that means the gameplay should feel a little bit more fluid.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a question of like, what are the tick rates actually on these servers? Because there are an awful lot of instances, you know, you've seen it, I've seen it, we've been subject of it, where like you turn a corner and you shoot a guy in the face and it's like he never even saw you. You know, like full bodied, like ran around a corner and like blasted a guy in the forehead, and it's like he never reacted. I had a guy 3 days ago tell me that he put an entire AS Val mag into me when he turned the corner and he got quote unquote Tarkov. Like he came in, he lost, and he came into the server and said, or came into the chat and was like, I put an entire AS Val mag into you, and then all of a sudden my screen went black. You know, and like you've had
Does
stuff
he have
on
a
Factory,
clip?
like, yeah, well, obviously, like not, right? Because they weren't streamers or whatever.
I'd be interested to
But they were like a 3-man. I killed like this 3-man team in labs. I actually got a 3-man team. I killed this 3-man team in labs, and this guy said that he like emptied a Val mag into me, and he was like, and I died.
Of course he did. I emptied a Val mag. I walked up. I sliced you with your jugular. You
That's
were bleeding.
Right.
And then
I cut your sack off, and you didn't even know.
Yeah.
You know?
So I won't accept anything like that.
Was it like 0.7 or 0.8 where you had that clip when you were on Factory where like somebody.
I went prone and he was.
You went
me.
prone,
Yeah.
but you were standing on his screen and he lit you up and you died, even though you were prone.
But we were close to each other, like geographically speaking.
Yeah. But that's my point. Is like it could have. I mean, the end result of all this is that it may have little to nothing to do with ping, like Dash said, and it could be something much more centralized around like the tick rates of the server or the processing ability of the server inside of those ticks, or whatever, or like ultra high fire rate weapons, like you know, if your HK is cranking out 900 rounds per minute or whatever, and the tick rate isn't fast enough to be able to keep up with really registering all of that as individual hits, then you're getting hit with 5 rounds at a time, like that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
When I did the testing for did you see the video with the health calculator?
Is that the one with the health being calculated wrong? The one that you put out like not too long ago?
Yeah. So what I was doing side by side with the app and
game,
like shooting. There was at the end, I don't know if I cut it out of the edit or not because I didn't want to like go down that rabbit hole. But at the end, Fluven went pop, 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 pop. And in my side of the things, I saw bang, bang, bang. And I got hit, and I died. I heard 2 bangs, 3 bangs. You got hit with like twice,
3 rounds at a time.
And he shot 5 bullets.
This is like the podcast episode that I always wanted. Even though I'm getting berated.
Listen, I thought I was...
Watch me browbeat a bitch.
I thought I was pretty...
No, dude, you were absolutely... This was totally fine. I don't feel attacked.
I didn't want to give you shit. The whole summary of like all this stuff, which I think is kind of the underlying reason why I wanted to have this talk, was that I think we agree that there's issues technology-wise, server side, content, whatever. Like we all know about them. It's nothing new. They should fix it. It's good to know about them. I think what is the biggest distinction here is what people are doing and why they're doing it. Is the thing that I wanted the most amount of clarification. I don't know who any of these streamers are, but all of the things that was mentioned or that they're getting hate for are things that I have not really gotten hate for and could have. So I feel like the fact that I'm bigger than a lot of those other guys, I kind of wanted to say like I should be lumped in there too, and here's why I didn't necessarily agree with whether it was yours or the comments or Reddit or whoever assessment on people's motives, right? Like you can talk about the tech and that's interesting and you can have objective discussions about that, but that what worried me was
trying to drawing the conclusions that I did or that I alluded to or whatever paints or looks like I'm attempting to paint them in a bad light, and whether that was necessarily my intention or not, that's kind of what happened. And I can't just point the finger at the audience and go like, well, you took it wrong. Like it's on me to have to be more careful, like you said.
There are a few points where I think like I think you were thinking this in your head, and it's so easy to do this, and I've done this before, where I have like a thesis in my mind, and I go and like make a video, and I realize like the main point I didn't make clear. Shit.
Right.
But like, the fact that the title is "Ping Abuse is Real" and all the streamers are doing it. You're saying
all the cool kids are doing it.
That the streamers are abusing this thing, and
clickbaity title.
And I think you even said, I'm not saying they're not unethical, but you can't. I'm not saying he beats his wife, but it's as soon as you say it, it's like
the word.
Fuck.
Well, you know what they say. As soon as you put "but" in a sentence, it negates everything that came before it, right?
Yeah, it was like, well, nobody was saying unethical, but now you just said unethical.
I'm not saying the Earth is flat.